Today's keyword is chocolate chip. Good evening. Did you hear that, Superintendent? I just want to make sure you heard that. Good evening, everybody. Today is April the 7th. Man, this month is already going so quick. But it is a beautiful day today, and the Board of Education and my colleagues, our colleagues at Central Office are very pleased that you would join us in front of your laptops and not be outside. But who knows, maybe you're on your porch enjoying this opportunity to see your Board of Education at work. But we are pleased and thankful that you've joined us tonight. This is indeed a very important night for us. One of our most important functions is to produce a balanced budget so that the citizens of this community and their children get the education that they deserve. The quality education they deserve. And so we conduct budget deliberation hearings. We are blessed and fortunate to have a committee called a Finance Committee that works with the administration's team to produce that balanced budget that produces a quality education for our children. The chair of our committee is Commissioner Beatrice LeBron, and she is joined by all of the members of the Board of Education as members of the Finance Committee. And so with that being said, I'll turn the baton over to our chair, Commissioner Beatrice LeBron.
Thank you, President White. And so welcome to round 2 of the deliberations for the 21-22 budget year. And I'm going to go over what to expect today again. The administration has prepared a number of presentations on a variety of topics, and I'll cover those topics in 1 second. And we will allow administration to present each topic one at a time. At the end of those topics and rounds, then we'll take questions round robin from each of the board members. Or if you have not submitted questions through the board and administration process, you can ask those questions related to those sections here tonight as well. So tonight we're going to be covering teaching and learning, which covers the academics, pre-K and general education, arts and athletics, student support services, placement, attendance, DOME, which is the Department of Multiple Language Education, MLL, multiple language learners, and parent engagement, special education, and budget book sections for reference for the community and for board members is going to be Section 5, Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning's budget, and Section 4, Early Childhood and Student Support budgets. So with that said, I believe the first presentation area up is going to be the Teaching and Learning Department, and I believe there are several presentations under that one. So Dr. Janelle Morris, you're up first. Yes.
Commissioner LeBron, I neglected to mention, my apologies, that in case people did not know, we normally do not, as part of these proceedings, these budget proceedings, do not take comments and statements from citizens. I know people are probably used to seeing that as part of our normal practice. I should have reminded people that that's not what we do in these budget hearings. So I just wanted folks to know, well, wait a second, why aren't the citizens speaking up? They always speak up first. That's the reason. It's not part of this particular proceeding. So thank you. Apologize for that.
No, that's okay. Thank you for reminding the community of that, President White, because I do think it's important for people to understand that we're not just meeting as committee of the whole, that this is budget deliberations, but we will have a public hearing tomorrow, and I will share a little bit more at the end of this deliberation, how individuals can still sign up to speak at the public hearing in regards to what they've heard yesterday and today. Thank you. Dr. Janelle Morris, you're up first.
Thank you, and good afternoon/evening, everyone. I'm very happy to introduce the Teaching and Learning budget. I'm going to be introducing some of the work that is under the umbrella of teaching and learning. And our team in teaching and learning consists of myself, the most wonderful executive assistant in Rochester, Jerica Turner, and we have also 5 teachers on assignment. We additionally have the chief academic officer. We have the 3 school chiefs, Dr. Peluso, Dr. Green, and Sheila Webster. We also have the executive director of accountability, Kelly McNair. We have the executive director of grants and program accountability, Carrie Pecor. We have Glenn Vanderwater, who you heard from yesterday, Chief Technology Officer. And lastly, but not least, Terry Orden, who is Executive Director of School and Program Efficiencies. And the mission of our work in the Office of Teaching and Learning is to align all of our initiatives and all of our work to foster students' individual talents and abilities in a nurturing environment of equity. Next slide, please. So we wanted to make sure that we let the public and the board know about what our work and how we approach and what we cover. So my office collaborates with those areas that I just described, where we have the Chief Academic Officer, who you'll be hearing from shortly, who will coordinate the curriculum, instruction, and assessments for some of our students. We have accountability, which will oversee not only the reporting and the evaluation that goes along with the district, but also accountability under the federal and state lens, and also does administration of the state testing system. So the Regents examinations and the 3 through 8 tests and such will come through the accountability office. We also have grants and program accountability. We had a wonderful presentation yesterday from the leader of that department, Carrie Pecor. And we also heard yesterday from Glenn Vanderwater, who's in charge of information management and technology. Grants and program accountability manages all of the grants that come into the district. And they also are very good at evaluating and determining the effectiveness of that. And we are building in an arm that I'll describe later in accountability and grants that will allow us to better determine how effective the use are of those incoming dollars in supporting our students. Information management and technology, we use all of our technological resources to support the district and all of our schools and students. And lastly, but certainly not least, as I mentioned, school and program efficiencies works to make sure that all the master scheduling is done properly and that we have alignment of our information systems with our student and our staffing to make sure we're supporting all of our classes and all of the classes and staffing that is required in buildings. Everything that we do is revolving around the schools and the students, and the chiefs of school leadership work within the oversight of the schools. Everything that we do is also aligned very tightly with the strategic plan for Rochester's and also the academic plan and the financial plan that was outlined for us by the independent monitor. Next slide, please. Thank you. So some of the priorities that we outlined for this upcoming school year have been shared in the past by the superintendent, but I just want to make sure I reiterate those today. So those priorities are in alignment with our strategic action plan, which I just mentioned, and the state monitor's academic and financial plans, and also any type of consent decree as well. These priorities are aligned with our budgetary identification in making sure that we are supporting fully the next generation standards and making sure that we are aligning all of our curriculum and instruction to the implementation of those curricula for K-12. So you'll hear a little bit more about that when my colleague speaks about teaching and learning from the Chief Academic Officer lens. Additionally, we are also focusing heavily on addressing and diminishing any type of academic learning loss that has occurred as we have gone through the past year and the impact of the pandemic. We are making sure that we're looking over and reviewing district-wide comprehensive academic materials. This includes textbooks and all of our assessment tools. We're trying to refer to review those and ensure that they are culturally relevant, that they are timely and accurate and most recent and the best materials to put in front of our students to make sure that they are competitive and successful when working in our current environment, especially with the new assessments that are coming that are aligned with the next generation standards. We want to make sure that our students have the most up-to-date resources in front of them to help them be competitive. I mentioned a little bit ago that we are also establishing a program evaluation arm. This is so that with all of those grant funds that are coming in and all of the ways that we are utilizing resources, we will be able to begin to determine just how effective our efforts are on changing the trajectory for student achievement. So we are very excited about that. And that is something that we want to have in place in the beginning of the next school year. And lastly, we are spending a lot of our effort on making sure that we have resources dedicated to professional development for our teachers and our staff. So next slide. I would want to know if there are any questions for my aspect. We're also going to hear from a lot of the different departments. And so this is just a high-level overview.
Thank you. And Kalia, are we taking questions for this section now, or did you intend for the other teaching and learning staff to do their presentations?
For the other teaching and learning. So I believe we have academics, and that will fold in all the other pieces underneath that.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Morris. So who's up next? Oh, hi, Dr. Kathy Black.
Good evening. Good evening. I am Kathleen Black. I am the Chief Academic Officer, and I'm going to share with you a bit about our budget process in our department. Next slide. So we have a pretty comprehensive and large department. All of the content directors in our specific subject areas report and support on my team. And so this is our comprehensive group. We encompass all of your core content areas. And so reading, math, social studies, science. We have the School of Innovation, our specialists, our essentials, our professional development, early childhood, and a wonderful executive assistant who supports our complete department. And so as was in previous, I want to just take a moment to thank the team for the hard work that has been done on both reviewing and starting to implement and fortify what we are doing in service of a comprehensive, rigorous, relevant instructional program for all students. Next slide. So in our purview, we set the academic foundation and direction for all grades and grades pre-K through 12. Our work is centered around developing and aligning our curriculum, instructional materials, and assessments for all core content areas, inclusive of our essentials, which are art, music, PE, and library. We are also responsible for building and delivering professional development and aligned experiences for multiple stakeholders. In our work for next year, we are blowing up and expanding who we serve and what we provide professional development around to include more diverse stakeholders and more diverse departments. And we are also in charge of articulating and revising the supports for our total instructional program. So think about things like partnerships, expanded learning opportunities, and some specialized programming, including IB and expeditionary learning. Next slide. So our alignment with the strategic action plan and our financial and academic independent monitor plans includes, as Dr. Morris mentioned, revision and updates to all of our academic programming in alignment with the next generation state standards. We know that in most content areas, our next generation state standards are coming online, and we have to cursory update everything that we do in service of students to make sure that we are reaching and meeting the benchmarks as outlined by our standards. We also are in charge of selecting and procuring updated textbooks and instructional materials as informed by our revised adoption schedule. We know that a comprehensive adoption of all of our textbooks hasn't happened in a little bit of a time. And so, go back one slide, please. And so we know that in the context of our work over the next year, we have to both prioritize which content areas need updated textbooks and go through the identification process to figure out the right ones and purchase them. As mentioned, we want to increase in professional development offerings, including our diversification of stakeholders supported and topics covered. So as mentioned, we want to make sure that our professional development office supports myriads of people across our district, not just teachers. And so we have some plans to support our central office professionals, our support staff, and really make sure that how we are building adults across our organization is aligned and comprehensive. In addition, we're also building out the topics that we're supporting, both from academics and from serviceable areas like how do we use our technology tools well, how do we ensure that we're providing the right documents and information for our students. And finally, one of the big pieces of our work for next year is really thinking about our high school redesign process to improve our course offerings, differentiate programs, and really focus on what we do for our incoming freshmen and freshman supports, which includes the exploration of Freshman Academy and specialized programs. And that is us in a nutshell. Most of what you heard in Dr. Morris's presentation, and I'll pause for questions, or I think we're waiting for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Black.
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe this is all under teaching and learning. So we're going to put a pin there and take questions round robin. So if you have questions about the presentation or questions related to the budget book and any of the sections that are related to teaching and learning, now is the time to raise your hand so I can call on you and we can keep things moving. So are there any questions for teaching and learning? Commissioner Adams.
I'm just curious as to when we speak of addressing learning loss, what does that look like? Does that mean summer school? I mean, I still, when you say that, I just don't have any understanding on how we're going to address that. And that's it.
So Dr. Black and Dr. Morris, typically the questions, either of you two can jump in or the superintendent can jump in or assign it to anyone else, but whoever wants to take it can take it.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll start. It's the batting of who will answer the question. So we were trying to figure out our body language. And so the addressing of learning loss is probably a very comprehensive plan that we're working towards. There are various ways that students are going to arrive back to us that have both academic learning loss and social emotional learning loss. And so we're working with both our teams across the board to figure out what programs, implementations, or shifts we have to make. And that is part of the long-term planning process, part which we can preview and plan for, and part which we have to be responsive. So once we receive our babies back into the building, we can offer them what they need when they arrive back to us.
I don't know that I would add to that. That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you. Just as kind of a follow-up to what Commissioner Adams just asked, how are we planning to identify those students? What identifications do we have in place so that we know who needs the most support?
So as part of our updated assessment strategy, we are both conducting and building common formative assessments, which will get in the moment responses and information from students. In addition, as we look at our more summative assessments, we'll be able to identify students that way. When you think about social emotional needs and gaps in supports, that will come from our school counselors, our professionals, what we know about typical learning loss in both areas. And so it'll be a comprehensive triangulation of data, both from what we get from academic inputs, as well as what we get from student observation. And I think there's probably going to be space there. No, not think. I know there'll be space to hear from community organizations and stakeholders about what they're receiving from our babies once they leave our rooms and leave our buildings and come back to us.
Commissioner Malloy, I'll also follow that up with, I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
Well, I was just wondering if, like, what's the timeline for that then? When are we making this identification? Because if we, wait until the start of the school year, we're already, our teachers are already going to be behind. And we need to make sure that those identifications have taken place really in the summer so that our teachers are well prepared to deliver high quality instruction and make those types of identifications.
You want me to add, Dr. Myers?
Sure, I was going in a little bit of a different direction, so go ahead.
So I think also, Commissioner Malloy, we have data that will come from our end of the year assessments that for students who matriculate to their next grade will follow them, in addition to summer school data that we're going to get from our 9 through 12s from our pre and post assessments.
So given that 70% of our kids are remote and probably our most at-risk students are currently remote, how are we going to get that data from those students who haven't been engaging all year?
In all the ways possible. So there has to be and will be plans to consistently outreach to kids to get the data that we need in order to support them. That's going to be a comprehensive event and comprehensive work across our teams.
I just want to insert, while 70% of our around 70% of our students are remote, 70% are not engaging. So I just want to be clear about that first and foremost. But I think it is critical that we work to make sure that we have accurate ways to measure online and gather that information. We are also working with Rock the Future and Dr. Black, Dr. Morris, and Elizabeth Reyes for the social emotional component are working to put some other plans in place and to look at some specific means for us to figure out how to do that both in person, online. So that's a collaborative partner that I'm very grateful for us to work with. And we start that work, I believe, next week with them. So we are looking at that. The other thing is once we finalize summer school, there'll be some work that we can do during summer school to address the learning loss. The other area that I wanted to share is that I just over break received some information and I sent it to both Dr. Morris and Dr. Black on a learning loss program. I don't want to promote it over online. I can talk to commissioners afterwards that I know some school districts that are similar to ours in size around the country are using. And this program, it really is dedicated to students of color, Black and Brown students, and they also do equity pricing, which is certainly very attractive as well. So we're just in the very infancy stages of reviewing this, and that might be a really good possibility. This is around literacy and reading and things of that nature. So that is something that has great potential for us as well.
And that's going to be administered over the summer?
As I said, Commissioner Malloy, I just got this over break, so we're looking to see if it's something that we could deliver prior to the end of the school year or if we'll deliver it over the summer. But this is something that will help us to accelerate and to assess where our students are. And as I said, I think it has really good promise for us.
Fantastic. Yeah, we just want to make sure our teachers are set up for success that first day of school in the fall. So I guess my second question then is, I'm talking right now, I have the floor.
Actually, I'm gonna, if you don't understand what round robin is, you can ask the question and then I'm gonna move to the next commissioner and we'll keep going around, round and round until all the questions are asked. I also want to remind commissioners that this is a budget deliberation, and if you can focus the questions on the actual budget in terms of dollars and cents, and also any of the pages with dollars and cents. So President White, I see your hands up and I'm going to round robin over to you.
Yeah, these are more generic questions, but I'm just going to shoot all the questions to you, and you can tell me if there are dollar amounts attached to them. What dollars are being spent at developing or introducing or maintaining culturally relevant pedagogy? This district has for years, prior of course to Dr. Myers-Small's administration attempted to do this with varying degrees of failure. It just has not worked. And as I leave this board, one of the things that I regret most is, notwithstanding our effort, we just have not made, it's not that we haven't tried, and past administrations haven't tried, but whatever investment we've made, it hasn't produced a strategic framework of consistently offering up culturally relevant pedagogy to all of our students. We've tried to start small, and it's never gotten to that system-wide scale. So what money, or what page, I would reverse the question, what page in the budget book tells me what investment we are going to make at finally getting that right? And I realize it won't happen in my professional lifetime here on the board, but I would like to go knowing that there is a plan. Secondly, again, I can save these for the round robin, but if you can direct me to what page, I will find what effort, if such a page exists. It might not, it might be in another presentation, but what money, what dollars we're spending to figure out how do we move those very stubbornly low ELA and math scores. The reason why we moved, Vice President Elliott referred to our steady movement of the graduation rate over a decade, is because we focused on the graduation rate like a racehorse with blinders. We followed that old adage, what gets measured gets done. I have not seen that, and I've been part of this, I have not seen a successful effort in terms of investment of dollars or strategy in terms of improving the ELA and math scores. What page in this budget book tells me how we are making an investment in improving those very stubbornly low, abysmally low, statewide low ELA and math scores? And finally, where is the investment that we're making in our students that are struggling? Those of you who go way back, you remember Iris Bannister, the SHAPE program. We've had all kinds of initiatives to try to deal with and currently. So again, it's not a matter of us not trying. We just have not been successful. What's the current program that we have? Somebody help me out here. The current program that helps address students who are struggling. The last administration has said that's not working. The board has been through suspension hearings upon suspension hearings, and we see these students sent to that program, and it's not working. So where would I look, and you don't have to answer this now, but where would I look for the investment, even if it's a preliminary investment, initial investment, that we are making to improve how we address students who are having behavioral or disruptive issues that the disciplinary process identifies as legitimate, but making sure that when they go to these places, that they're getting the help that they need. Vice President Elliott and I went to, I think it was somewhere down south, and we heard of this great program. Remember that, Cynthia? Camelot. And that program, I see Dr. Black smiling. Maybe she knows something about that. But where on, and again, it might be in this budget book or it might be in a later presentation. I'm leaving wanting to know in those three areas, where is the investment that is going to reap benefits? So when I look across the street and I see our ELA scores going up, I see students learning about their heritage, and I see students who are struggling having some success, I can say I was there when they made that turnaround investment. So I need to know where in those budgets I can find those. And if you don't have the answers right now, that's fine. Thank you, Commissioner LeBron.
So President White, is there one question you want administration to ask now? And then I'm going to go round robin back around. And then if you want to.
They can take their choice and then they can pick up on the other questions
pick
later.
one of those three.
Pick
and
one
then
of
I'm
them.
going to go round robin again. And then we can go
That's
back
fine.
to that.
That's fine.
All right. Thank you for the question, President White. I'll answer the first one. The first one, the answer is we have made a direct allocation towards the area in question on page 77, where we have identified a position that will be specifically dedicated to ensuring the equitable representation and equitable curriculum resources across the district. So that role is going to audit existing curriculum and existing instructional practices and existing materials, and they will be responsible for ensuring its equitable distribution across the district.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just for clarification, you said page 77, is that the Equity Inclusion Curriculum Program position title?
Yes,
Thank
it is.
you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Malloy, did you have another question before I ask anyone else? I don't see any hands up. Otherwise, I'm gonna bounce it back.
Thank you. I think this is sort of a general question as well, and I'm trying to consider dollar amounts with this general question. We are looking at, as a committee, or there's a task force in charge of looking at our managed choice policy, the rezoning efforts, et cetera. Do you anticipate any changes to these educational programs in the future if we go that route, if we decide to eliminate our zones, if we get rid of the managed choice policy, if we move more towards neighborhood schools? What effect is that going to have on these services in general? And that might be something that's general enough that needs to go on the question log, but those are some of the concerns that I have.
So I'm actually going to ask that it goes in the question log, Commissioner Malloy, because at the hearing on Monday, I did hear Dr. Morris mention that it's not going to impact us this budget year. So if those changes were to occur, that we would really be talking about this and those details that you're probably seeking in the 22-23 budget year.
Right. Let me be more specific then. So we're talking about like textbook allocations, et cetera. How do we even assess or determine what those needs are if we're making those decisions this year and then we potentially have those changes down the road? Are we going to start a program then that we can't finish? Because that has been the history of this district, starting programs and then they change 4 to 5 years later. So I guess that is the main concern that I have.
Yeah, and Kalia, can you log that into the board question log? And I think those are valid concerns, Commissioner Malloy. So let me just say, again, my expectation from us, even as the board, would be to make sure that we are also monitoring that those details are being aligned with the planning for the budget for the 22-23 budget year. Because there are details that are often forgotten about, and it's a really big lift if we are to move into a different direction from the managed choice policy. And I will say that's one policy I always bring up and say, you and I may not always agree on things, but we do agree that that's an area that we can agree on, that needs to change. And obviously it's going to be very impactful across the entire district and all of our systems. So I would, for me personally, I'm asking for it to be logged because it's not related to the deliberation or the budget tonight, but certainly look to the entire board to be mindful of the accountability piece that we also have to the administration to make sure that those things don't fall through the cracks when they're developing the 22-23 budget. So if there are no other, well, I think President White had 2 additional questions, and if there are no other questions, I'm gonna wrap up with his 2 questions, and then we can move on to the next section, which is going to be student support services. So does anybody want to answer President White's last 2 additional questions?
I can at least foreshadow his second question.
Okay.
The foreshadowing is that the budgeting for ELA and math direct support are in the school budgets. You'll see if you look at them page by page, you'll see direct allocations towards, for example, ELA, math, through Title I and other allocations to get to ELA and math support. You'll see that directly listed in each school's budget. So once again, I feel like that's a foreshadowing for our colleagues who will be speaking on the behalf of the schools, and they will be able to better explain how each one of those line items will directly impact schools.
Let me, Commissioner LeBron, if I can just add to address, to have those folks get ready. When they make these presentations, I'm gonna just tell you my experience, the last thing I wanna see is a disparate presentation of different schools doing their own thing. That's where we're in the situation, in my opinion, that's where we're in the situation we're in now. There wasn't any centralized management of how you improve your academic performance in terms of ELA and math scores. We had different principals, some with varying degrees of success, some with varying degrees of failure, doing their own thing. And now, my personal opinion is, now is the time for central office to dictate how that should look, at least provide some framework for it. We have not done that in the past, and no one can say what I'm saying is wrong, because look at the scores. Look at the scores. They're stubbornly low. And I believe it's because we have not focused with laser-like accuracy on the outcomes and how they are improved. And again, if when we've interviewed superintendents, some have opted to discuss a decentralized approach. Some have opted for a centralized approach, giving principals who are successful greater flexibility. But I don't see, right today, I don't see a plan. So when I get hear these presentations, if I'm asking questions and I hear different principals saying different things, I'm going to be concerned, because that approach has not worked. We have to have some discipline about how we expect our teachers and our principals to produce results, because the proof is in the pudding. And I'm not blaming teachers, I'm not blaming principals, but systemically, from the board to the schools, to the superintendents, it has not worked. And the evidence is the measurement of that. ELA and math scores are at record lows. They're not, when no one's expecting 75% of our kids to be proficient at 3s and 4s. No one's expecting that. But the percentages that our children are performing at are far too low, even for urban children. So I'm just foreshadowing my question.
Is there a question though that from that, because tonight they're going to continue to give presentations, but the presentations is to give really an overview of the sections we should have read and highlighted and asked questions out of the budget book. So I want us to like stay focused, because we don't have a lot of time tonight. And two, we know that ELA has been an issue. It was an issue when I joined the board. It was an issue when you joined the board. You know, for a number of years, the board was just focused on graduating kids, even with low ELA outputs. So I hear you, but I just want to, again, remind us all to like focus on the budget. I do have a question on the budget though. So if there is a question out of there that has not been answered, President White, let me know now before I ask my question about section 5, page 72, because I do have a question that I want to uplift.
Well, and I know politicians say this frequently, and they don't really mean it, but respectfully, that is a legitimate question. That is a very legitimate. How will you be spending our money to do what has not been done before? I see Dr. Jallo, I'm making assumptions. She's shaking her head, yes. That's a legitimate question, because it has not happened before. We've had these forums, and I've been here for them, and it has never produced the desired results. So that's a legitimate question. And I'm foreshadowing to that team that when those principals, and I start asking questions about ELA and math scores, their answers, in my opinion, better reveal a pattern of an attack that is understood from the administration to the buildings about how we're going to improve these scores. And how we're going to use that money to do that.
It's legitimate, but again, not necessarily in this context right here for this section. Although, unless your question is, show me what positions you're creating or what changes in the budget you're making to support the increase in ELA. So I'm going to end it with that and allow administration to respond, but I do have a question before we move on, and I did not want to forget this question, because on section 5, page 72, there are 61 position cuts. And when I looked at the paraprofessional line in the 2021 amended budget, so it looks like we in 2020, 2021 had zeroed. We added 64 paraprofessionals. We're zeroing that out again. But then it looks like we added positions under administrators. We added 2 positions, and then in civil service added 2 positions. So the total number deducted is going to be 61 FTEs. So I just need to understand what those paraprofessional individuals were doing. And the teaching and learning, it's Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. And I think, President White, honestly, it also goes back to what you're talking about, but understanding in the context that perhaps our systems don't work. I think it's a big systemic approach. It's an issue, but certainly during learning loss, during the pandemic, I am concerned around that support staff for teachers and for students. Really, that support staff is really support for the students. So someone can answer that question.
So Carlene is unmuted, but also I believe that this is an accounting reflection on this page. The paraprofessionals were associated with athletics, and we had to move them in the pandemic. And so it's an accounting reflection on that page and not necessarily a reflection of a decrease of staffing in the Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning line.
That causes some concerns because that's not how that should be documented and presented, because again, our budget should be understandable to anybody who picks it up and reads it. And when I see parentheses around numbers and something zeroed out, I'm going to make the assumption that those are decreases and there's a cut there. And if those cuts are not reflected somewhere else, unless Carlene, if you want to explain and also share if those positions were added in a different section.
So this goes back to the fall timeframe, and we were making the adjustments, and the paraprofessionals were placed out on leave, and then they were brought back in to work in the rec centers. So they actually were moving from one department to another. So that's all that it is showing the movement between the two departments. So the way it actually ended up reflecting, as I recall from the research that I performed on this previously, was that they were moving out of the building codes per se and going into the athletic codes because it was a rec center. So it's just, it's the same people, but they're just moving between departments.
And just as a follow-up then, are those people then, when I go into school profiles, I will see the increases of that total number throughout the entire section for schools?
They should be going back into their former positions, yes, because if we're not using the rec centers any longer, they would be going back into the positions they previously held.
Okay, thank you. I'll look for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, I'm going to try to make a more specific question that targets President White's question. This question is for Dr. Morris. You said that we're going to see in the individual schools portion increases in ELA and math direct support. That's what you told us. Can you tell us what guidance the schools are getting and what accountability measures are being put in place to ensure that those dollars will be well spent, that those dollars will actually improve math and ELA scores?
Okay, so I will start, and then I'm also going to ask for some assistance from Dr. Black. So we looked at all of the assignment of Title I staff across the district. We analyzed those to ensure that there was an equitable distribution of reading, math, instructional coaches, looking at all the different types of coaches that could be attributed through title. We made sure that those were distributed in the different budgets. We also looked to ensure that where there were grants that had ended, we had made sure that staffing had been attributed to those buildings so that staff were not lost to provide support in buildings when the funding had ended for these long-term foreign funding sources. We also have a plan for the upcoming school year where we want to do a train the trainer model with these coaches to make sure that they are getting direct PD in interventions and supports that we want to see in each one of the schools. And that will be monitored monthly. We will have monthly professional development for those coaches and those Title I support staff. And then they will come back and we will make sure that they have been able to implement this. There will be support in the walkthrough process. And then in the following month, we'll do it again. We'll bring them back. We will train. We will make sure that they are implementing that professional development with fidelity. So this is a new process. We discussed this, the school chiefs, Dr. Black and I, we made sure that we were able to do this in alignment with grants and their requirements. We made sure that we examined all the grants that were ending and made sure that we had support that were attributed to all the schools. So schools weren't left without a coach because there was a funding source ending. And we've developed this process going into the fall where we want to bring out the Title I support teachers that I identified that are in the budget listed and make sure that we are bringing them and doing the train-and-trainer model so that is fully implemented in schools.
Can I ask a follow-up question before you hand it off to Dr. Black? When you describe funding positions with Title I based on the retirement of some other grant source or whatever, is that the only thing you're looking at, or are you looking at the actual academic achievement in each school to set the threshold? Because if it's just to keep programs funded at previous levels, that kind of misses the meaning of what President White's trying to get at in terms of the whole accountability system, right? So could you just elaborate on that just a little more?
Thank you. And that's a great a point to bring up. And I'm glad you asked that, because you're absolutely right. We did not just look at the funding sources ending, and therefore we have to make sure we replace someone to support ELA and or math. We looked at the accountability status, which relates directly to the performance on the state assessments. We also looked at performance. We looked at current allocation and looking to see how they might have supports from other grant sources and such. But we most specifically looked at performance. We looked at accountability status. We looked to see, are they losing someone, and where would they best benefit from an ELA, math, instructional coach, or a different type of Title I support person. And the school chiefs had the conversations one-on-one with each one of the school teams to make sure that it was best identified the type of Title I support that we want to identify to replace and or recharacterize within the school. It may have been that a school had 8 or 9 ELA teachers and they would be best supported with a distribution of ELA and or math support. So that was part of the conversation. We made sure then to attribute the staff, as you'll see listed with the Title I support, based on those conversations, based on that analysis, and based on that supportive conversation that we've had with the schools.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Morris and Dr. Black. Commissioner Malloy.
Thanks, and forgive me in advance if this has already been asked and I missed it somehow. On page 70, just in terms of the salary compensation that's listed, I saw a difference between the 2021 adopted budget and our proposed budget this year of almost $1 million. Can someone just explain quickly the why the increase?
Say the page again, Commissioner Malloy. I'm sorry. Section and page?
Section 5, page 70. Oops, sorry.
I'm not seeing it specifically. I do remember this question coming up previously. So let's see here. I think, can you tell me again? I see page 70 in section 5.
Page 70. So it's under the subtotal for salary compensation for teachers and administrators. And so I just wanted to know the reason for the increase. This is all under teaching and learning. That's why I was asking.
Let's see here. I do have this answer. I just need to look it up. So if it's okay, either we can put in the question log, but I do know I already answered it once. I just don't remember the reason. I have to go back to it.
Okay, thank you.
President White.
there was that last question, where in the budget were we going to find information regarding the district's efforts to turn around our previously failed efforts at helping struggling students? I identified SHAPE as one. The other past effort, if you all recall, was on that building on West Main Street. Anybody? Lofton, thank you. That was one in a series of efforts. This district, it has tried, but we've always been unsuccessful. I mentioned the Camelot. I think Dr. Black was smiling when I said that. We had some preliminary conversations with Terry Dade about that. He seemed to be impressed. So my question is, where in the budget will I be able to identify when 5 years from now, 2 years from now, I look back and say, okay, that was the beginning of our successful efforts at addressing students who heretofore we had not been successful at helping, students who are struggling. Where in the budget, and again, it could be a 1 second answer, page 57 or wherever it is. Where is that? Where's that investment in turning those students around? And my colleagues know what I'm talking about, because we do those suspension hearings and we are constantly saying, but that program's not working. Those students are just not even getting bare bones assistance. Where's that effort? Where are we making that investment?
So I'm going to look for the page that identifies, for example, our reading program that we are now implementing. And that is a cost that we are leveraging to increase the reading skills for our students, and that we would expect to pay out in higher performance for our students, and obviously have that measured out in the schools. I'm not sure what page that is on, so I can definitely, if I can't find it shortly, I will make sure that that's reported in the log. Other major initiatives that we are funding in this budget, Dr. Black, any pages that you might be able to share?
President White, I just want to give some clarity, because I think you're forgetting the name of it, but it's LINKS, and that's the program
Thank
that
you.
Currently use. And I did see an increase in the budget line item for LINKS and had some questions around that. Those questions were answered in the question round 1. So I can pull it up and send it to you if you want to see it, but the program is called LINKS, so.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
There, but I'd be curious to understand what those increases mean. If we've had numerous conversations to, you're right, move to a different program like Camelot. But just so administration is aware, President White is referring to.
Thank you very much.
And that program, what we're going to fund to do changes in that program.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. That's exactly the one I was looking for. Again, there has been a history. The LINKS is the latest one. And with all due respect to the good, hard staff that work over there, we have direct evidence as board members that it's not working. I have to be honest. We talk about it in our suspension hearings. It's not because staff aren't trying. I want anybody to say, oh, well, he blamed us. Nope, it is not working. And so we've looked at Camelot, but this history goes way back. So again, I don't need the answer now, but I need to know by the time these budget deliberations are over, where is the investment that we're making to deal with these very challenged students? We've got it. This can't continue to go on. Thank you, Commissioner LeBron.
I will also respond in the question log, and I can have a conversation. I don't want to get into talking about specific programs, but I did investigate that, and it was extremely costly. So,
yeah,
but I can circle back about that and talk about that specific program with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner LeBron.
Thank you. Vice President Elliott, did you have your hand up and want to ask a question? Yeah.
I was going to comment on what the president was talking about, but I think that I came in a little late on the conversation because you're talking about specific programs. I was basically going to say that in terms of academic success around ELA and math, that the whole budget is geared towards, ensuring that we're increasing in those areas. But you were specifically talking about a particular program, and so I have no question at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to wrap up this section and we're going to move on to the next presentation and sections of the budget book on student support services, placement, attendance, DOME, MLL, and parent engagement. So Dr. Martinez, are you up first? Martinez Davis, or
Yes.
future Dr. Martinez Davis, almost.
Yeah, can't come soon enough, but yes, I am up next and I am going to be representing our Division of Support Services this evening. Good evening, President White, Vice President Elliott, and Commissioners. Next slide, please. So our Division of Support Services, our goal is to support students, staff, and the school community. Our primary role is to provide guidance, support, and implement mandates to ensure the district's successful operation. This year, under the leadership of Dr. Meyer Small, our student support services grew to be the Division of Support Services. So we have Shelley Fowler, who is our executive assistant, Desiree Richmond, who you all know, she's our acting chief of special education, Christopher Miller, our Chief of Human Capital, Carlene Pierce, our Chief of Financial Officer, Mike Schmidt, our Chief of Operations. They are all part of our support services. In addition to that, we have an Executive Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Social Emotional Learning, Elizabeth Reyes. In our division, we have our Director of Bilingual Education, Annalise Cruz, our Director of Multilingual Education, Abel Perez, Director of Placement, Joe Capizzuto. Director of Student Support Services, that's Crystal Clark. Director of Transition Systems Youth in Transition, that's Enid De Jesus. We have the Coordinator of Health Services, Erin Grotman. The Director of Parent Engagement, Khadijah Mohammed. The Director of Youth Engagement, Anthony Jordan. Our district trauma, illness, and grief, and our ROC restorative teams fall under our umbrella, as well as our Office of Social Workers, the Associate Director of Attendance, our volunteer coordinator, Ricky Fraser, the Associate Director of Attendance is Betsy Hoffer, and our school counseling department. They are all under support services. In addition to that, Kalia, the next slide, please. Besides the reorganization, we have continued to look continue and review the services that we provide to our scholars, our staff, and our community. We reviewed current programs, processes, and responsibilities. We use projections from pre-K through 12 to determine support services staff and program allocations for our buildings. We review contracts and processes to maximize grant funding. We updated our process to support our schools during traumatic events. So now we have a streamlined process for all of our buildings in our entire districts on how we're going to respond during a trauma, illness, or grief event. We are providing quarterly newsletters to our district with social emotional learning supports, activities, and resources, and we continue to provide professional development on social emotional learning, topics like that, restorative practices, as well as equity and inclusion. We have been doing that all year and we'll continue to do that in the next year. So we wanted to align ourselves to the strategic plan and support our district's vision, mission, and strategic plan, and support the state monitor's financial academic plans and the consent decree. So we have improved mandated practices for our ELL families, English language learner families, and our special education families. We updated our trauma, illness, and grief processes and procedures with handbooks, manuals, and professional development to multiple stakeholders. We created the student remote support teams. We are looking at managed choice process and zone configuration. Our attendance office has been providing reports. Our associate director has been presenting to our Board of Education, and she meets with teams at school to support students and reduce chronic absenteeism. This year, our Office of Parent Engagement established new procedures, strategic plan, and a new parent leadership group. We are also working currently on our 21-22 learning plans. We are continuing to fortify our restorative practices in our schools and our district by supporting the social emotional learning of our students. We, in addition to that, we have updated our website. Student Support Services has a magnificent website with many resources that any family, any student can access at any point. So we had some creativity this year because we truly wanted to be fiscally responsible, and we looked at creative ways to best support our budget process. One of those things was we, as a division, we reduce supplies, contractual, equipment. The placement office increased collaboration with the Office of School Efficiencies to maximize resources, providing ENL units of study. We moved 6 FTEs that were in the A fund that are supportive of our rock restorative. They were transferred to grant funding. We use carryover funds from Title III to increase supports for English language learners without additional district cost. And the way we did that, we were able to hire additional interpreters and translators through Title III to supplement current services. We were able to hire teacher assistants to support bilingual programs in middle schools. And for next year, we will be having a progress monitoring tool for our ENL teachers to monitor the progress of our students. And we will be offering online access to bilingual libraries for our students. And that is our Division of Support Services.
Thank you, Dr. Future Dr. Martinez Davis. So pending, but soon enough. Any questions so far on this round? Rebecca, welcome, our parent rep. I've seen your face. Can you hear me, Rebecca? I think she froze. Maybe I froze. Oh, did I freeze? No, she froze. Well, our parent rep is in the room, and so just so folks know, she will also have the opportunity to ask questions when she comes back. But any questions from any of the board members? All right, Dr. Martinez. Well, I keep calling you Dr. Martinez. It's just a predicament, okay. And you're on your way there. So
I receive it.
Ms. Martinez Davis, I do have some questions for you if nobody else has any questions. And I guess there was supposed to be a presentation on early childhood. Do you have early childhood under your budget?
I do not.
Okay. So is someone presenting on the pre-K piece, or that was just all under teaching and learning? It was, Kathleen? Okay. I'll actually submit my questions then because we already passed that round for the pre-K piece. So the only question I have for you is moving those FTE positions from Rock Restorative under grant funds and dollars. The only concern I have with that is that we've done that in the past. And then when we have budget crunches or those grants ended, we ended up not funding those positions or having to cut. So part of me is not a fan of moving positions that are hardline positions that we value under grants. And so I just want to let you know that if we get to that position where that grant is cut, we really should have kept it under a hard line, because rock restorative and restorative practices is something that this board, we don't agree much as a collective board, but I will say restorative practices has been something we all have agreed on over the last 2 budget years and have fought as a board together to ensure that restorative practices were in place as a board. So I do want to highlight that we may not agree on a lot of things, but that is certainly one area where we do. And so it's more of a caution and to also bring to your attention, as well as the full administration, because this is your new budget year for us with us, that the board values highly restorative practices. And so if they're moved over to the grant and that works this year, great. If those grants are cut, our expectation would be that those positions are moved back into the A funds because it is something critically important to us. Commissioner Malloy, did you have your hand up for a question? Because then your hand went away, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's related to the other question that I had from the other section. It's a very similar question to the page 70 question. It was page 24, just the increases in the compensation. So I'll put it on the question log as well.
Okay, I was gonna say if it was this section, we could take it. If it's not, I'm gonna submit questions too. And we did extend the deadline, so the board is aware. We did have the deadline originally for Monday, then realized, wait, it was spring break, and recognizing that everybody may have been out of town and spending time with family, and so the extension is until tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So just want to put that out there as well. If there are any additional questions you may have in round 2, not related to what's being presented tonight. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move over to special education. Thank you again, Ms. Martinez Davis, future Dr. Martinez Davis. Special education.
Good evening. Hello, everyone, and I'm happy to be here today to present the special education budget. I wanted to let you know I have my directors with me today that include Amy Tata, who is aligned with Sheila Webster, Melissa Pittman, who is aligned with Shirley Green, and that's in the next slide. Michelle Osgood, who is aligned with Carmine Peluso, and Michelle Hewitt, who is the acting director currently with North Star and External Education. I want to give kudos to this team because they are so dedicated to special education and our students, and work tirelessly to make our programs better and in compliance, and to move our district forward in the special education services that we provide. So I appreciate them being here tonight, and I'll continue on. So one of the processes that the process that we took in developing a budget is to break it down, right? To take a look at what's our continuum. What do we offer our students with disabilities currently? What do we need to expand on? What's missing? So what we did is we took a look at all of our current programs. And the first thing we did, we said, okay, if there's a kindergartner, we have to roll them up to first grade. And is that in their school? Do we have the program that they need in their school? And so we continued to do that all the way from K through age 21. We then made projections for pre-kindergarten. How many pre-kindergarten students does the trend line data tell us? How many kindergarten students do we have, are we expecting possibly based on some of the census that we have? How many 18 to 21-year-olds will remain with us because they're NYSA, New York State alt assessment students that need transition programs? And then we take a look at the students that are leaving us. Who are those graduates? And we are planful to say, where are our openings going to be? We then take a look at the capacity of our classrooms, and actually not just classroom capacity, but sections. So when you start getting into high school planning, how many students are going to need algebra? How many students with disabilities are going to need global history? And then we have to say, okay, how many sections of that do we need? So in order to do that, especially when you start getting into classwork and coursework like that, we really needed to work with our registrars, our school chiefs, our principals, and our associate directors. And they needed to help us. And we went over this several times to take a look at seeing what we did. And I want you to know that when we looked at classrooms, we didn't say fill them, right? You need to plan for growth. So if it's a 12-1-1 special class, I didn't really want more than 9 students, if possible, in that class, maybe a little more depending on what the trends we're looking at, but we wanted to leave room for growth. The one thing I know about special education in my career is it will change. We still have over 1,000 CSE meetings to conduct. Things change. Hopefully kids improve and we can move them into less restrictive environments. Some need a little more support, so we might have to move them around. I'm concerned about lower pre-K numbers for students with disabilities. We usually average around 500 preschool students. We're down to about 350 this year. I believe that all this is due to COVID. I also believe that there may be some kindergarten families or students that did not register because of COVID. I'm wondering if there's going to be influx there. So we're trying to be planful and plan for growth. So we can go to the next slide, please. So when we talk about how does our budget align with the strategic action plan for the district, but also the special education strategic action plan, our state monitors financial and academic plan, and our consent decree, which is an added challenge that we have as a district. One of the biggest impacts I think that we have made this year is in our compliant practices. We are monitoring closely timelines, consents, evaluations, CSE, CPSE due dates. This continues to be, I will be honest with you, a challenge because of COVID, right? Because we didn't have, it's hard to evaluate a student if they're not in person. So for a while there, and there are some parents that chose not to do that, to have a telepractice, even though we offered those. We definitely are working to provide professional development for our clerical staff. Our associate directors have professional development every meeting. And we're really lifting the program as far as revamping even process and procedures. We've revamping manuals, handbooks, the district plan that you approved. We're looking at a total revamp of our placement process so that we can get quicker entrance for our students. Because when you think about it, a student comes from out of state, it requires a reevaluation, and we're trying to move that along quicker because the biggest target date for us is Beds Day. So that's some of the compliant practices that we are doing. When we take a look at having clear expectations for roles and responsibilities. Again, we have manuals for our clerical team. We're putting together frontline manuals that and revamping them and revising them and updating them. And we're making it clear what the roles and responsibilities, right down to the special education teacher as the case manager, all the way up to our directors and even to myself. We have made great improvement on the related service log. So how does this connect, right? We've heard about Medicaid revenue, but more than that, the related service log process is very important to document the services that we are delivering when it comes to speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, nursing services, counseling services. Most of those, all of those are billable through Medicaid, but more importantly, if someone came to you and said, show me that you provided this service, it is the expectation for those related service providers that they document everything that's on that IEP. So if there's 2 sessions that they're required to provide, they must enter it. We have developed a process to address issues of when service logs are not completed accurately with support, training, and if necessary, you know, sitting down with that person and talking to them about their job responsibility. I think we've done a great job with parent engagement. We are trying to communicate more with our parents. We're looking at ways to reach out to parents. We have over a 97% participation rate in our CSE meetings this year, and that's really due to the addition of Zoom meetings. And we're going to continue that practice in the future. All of our team, pretty much all of our team attends the CPAC meetings. They're very helpful, and we're providing professional development even in that venue as well. Most importantly, I want to stress just what President White has been saying, the academic focus, right? We've done all of these compliant practices, updated procedures. We're getting things in order. We're addressing the consent decree. We're addressing graduation rates. We're doing all of those pieces. But we do have to uplift our students with disabilities ELA and math scores. I totally agree. And I believe that we have done a great amount of collaboration with our curriculum department and with our teaching and learning department. We're bridging and coming together on ensuring that all of our special education teachers are trained in the curriculum, providing the curriculum, giving students access to grade level curriculum, even though they may have a reading disability, we still need to do those things. And we are really want and we're also engaging with our regional associates on professional development on specially designed instruction. That is the key to special education, is specially designed instruction. How are we adjusting that instruction to meet the needs of that student? What clicks for that student? What are the accommodations, or what is the instructional model that we need to provide for those students? We are developing systems for tracking student progress, as far as, what is the ninth grade, our expectations? How are we doing credit recovery, grade recovery? It has to be more immediate than just at the end of a marking period when they've already maybe failed the class that at that time. And most importantly, we're working with the instruction office to build pre-referral strategies. We need to have pre-referral strategies. We need to address our students who are not successful the first time it's taught to them, or the second time it's taught to them, and before they become in need of special education services. So that's really our budget. If you've seen that in there, we're based a lot of what we're doing on compliant practices, but I will tell you, special education will change between now and even definitely before September, and we'll make adjustments as we go along. But we have planned for room for growth. That's my presentation. So if there's any questions, we'll be glad to take them.
Thank you so much, Desiree. I see Commissioner Clark has his hand up, so I'm going to call on him first.
Thank you. Had a question regarding on page 3 of 18, the special education tuition. Are those funds that we pay out in tuition to outside organizations, or is that part of your budget? Because
which section are you in? Is it in
section 3, page 18, about halfway down the page on the fixed obligations and variability? The first line, special education tuition.
So tuition is the tuitions that we pay for BOCES and those types of placements.
Okay, because I had a question regarding that. I noticed that last year we amended the budget and we brought it up to 33.6 million, but we only spent 20.4 million. I'm assuming that's due to COVID and some other, COVID. But my question is, did we have a plan in 2021 that would take us to $33.6 million in expenditures in tuition? And if we did, what part of that plan was abandoned in the proposed budget for 21-22? Because I noticed we knocked that amount down by about $8.5 million.
Okay, so the only, and Carlene, you can jump in on this if you want, but my understanding is, everything is driven by a CSC meeting. So when we make a recommendation, if it's something that we're not able to provide in our district, that's when we seek a placement like BOCES 1, BOCES 2, Mary Cariola. Last summer, we did have some meetings where some of our students from BOCES 1 returned to our district. We're continuing to take a look at opportunities to say how can we develop programs within our district to continue to reduce and make reductions in those areas. So it is a focus because we feel we can keep our kids close to home, and we're trying to do that. You have to do that very carefully. You have to be very planful, and you have to include parents in that decision-making process.
That's
Does that
great.
answer your question?
Yeah, it does, because I wanted to make sure that the budget wasn't reduced by $8.5 million. It was just basically a transfer, and you're going to do that work internally. So you'll still have those funds available to make sure that we comply to the consent decree and meet all of our obligations.
Yes, thank you.
Carlene, I see you have your hand up, and so I'm assuming you also would like to respond to this.
Right. I just want to take the board back to where we were about a year ago. And actually it was in June, the OSC had let us know that there was speculation that the BOCES obligation was under budgeted. It was one of the items that they had mentioned within their letter. When Dr. Myers-Small and I arrived and we started looking through things, we did indeed find that it was an under budgeted situation. So even though the amount that was adopted or approved was at the the $21 million level, moving up to 33, we needed to make a budget amendment in order to take it to the appropriate amount. So that amendment occurred in November. We had to make other reductions in the 2021 budget in order to properly align the expenditure with the absolute obligation that we were working with BOCES on. So just to bring clarity and recollection to that.
Thank you, Carlene. And just to add even more clarity, part of that was driven by the two previous superintendents saying that they were going to reduce our cost to BOCES and sending students out, and had no actual plan in place to, one, bring kids back in, two, did not take into account that parents could also say, no, I don't want to, and then have a hearing, and that the hearing officer would side with parents and say, yes, I side with this parent. The district cannot provide those services at the same level as this other program. And three, again, we didn't have a plan, Mr. Clark. So so we were cited all over the audits, but this is partly why as well. So it's been a challenging road here. And I, for one, am grateful that we have a consent decree now, so that nobody can mess with what needs to happen for special education at this point. Rebecca?
Thank you. I had a question. Section 4, page 63 lists a special education tuition that was not part of the original budget, was amended to add $12 million, but then has nothing planned for this coming budget. Is that part of that adjustment that you were just talking about, or is that something else?
And actually, I'm going to have to look that up so I give you the absolute accurate information on that. So if we can add that to the question log, I'll get an answer to you. I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Because I was looking at the preschool special education budget, and it's only 4 million in comparison to that 12. So I don't know how those two balance. So, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And we extended the questions, just so you know. I know you were having some connectivity issues for tomorrow. So if you have some additional questions, you do have until tomorrow at 5 o'clock, along with the rest of the board. Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, I just want to thank the administration for that presentation. It was long, but it was comprehensive, and it was reassuring to hear details that we're not going to find in numbers per se. This is perhaps one of the most important pieces of our work this year, and needs to be the focus of a significant amount of our attention if we're going to move graduation rates. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. If there are no additional questions in this area, I believe actually that may conclude all presentations in this section of the deliberation. So just as some reminders, and then we can officially wrap up and finish. As I mentioned twice already, I'll mention it one more time. If there are any questions that come up for you between tonight and tomorrow before 5, please submit those questions. We are still taking questions for round 2, and then what will happen is round 3, and that can also be as a catch-all. But we have a budget hearing tomorrow. And so the board will be there, and we as a board will only be listening. So a reminder to the community that we are just there to listen along with the administration to any of your concerns that you want to uplift through that process. And I'm going to turn it over to our board clerk so that you can hear on how you can still sign up to speak at the public hearing tomorrow. Kalia?
So just a reminder for folks who are interested in signing up for a public hearing, you may do so by noon of the day of the meeting. So by noon tomorrow, please email the Board of Education at boardofelducation@rcsdk12.org, or you may call the board office to sign up. You must give your name and your affiliation. Also a reminder that only board budget questions will be taken at the public hearing. You may not, unfortunately, at this forum, discuss anything other than the 21-22 proposed budget. But if you are interested in signing up for other topics, you may do so to the business meeting or the special meeting next week, Tuesday. Another reminder that once you do sign up, someone will contact you from the board office to provide you with the Zoom link wherein you may be able to access the meeting. And remember, it is 3 minutes per person to speak.
Thank you to our board clerk. And then finally, just a reminder that the next and final deliberation session will be Tuesday, April 20th. And I have my monitor here with the notes and agenda, so I keep looking that way, I apologize. But it will be during the Finance Committee of the Whole. That is April 20th. And at that deliberation, we will cover schools and school profiles and the East EPO. And that will be budget sections 4 for school programs and school chiefs, and section 6. So I do anticipate that deliberation will probably take us the longest, because we are all very passionate about being liaisons to our schools, and there may be some changes in those budgets that we will have lots of questions around. So I just ask that we come prepared with questions related to the budget, those sections and the book for April 20th. And with that said, this concludes the deliberation session for the 21-22 budget year, round 2. Thank you,
Commissioner LeBron,
yes.
Kalia, can you repeat the contact information for public speakers, please?
Yes. Let me make sure that I give you, I want to also give the phone number. So I'm going to pull that up really quickly.
Yeah, the email and the phone number to register.
Sure.
Thank
so
you.
It's Board of Education, all one word, at rcsdk12.org to email. And you also may call the board office at 585-262-8525 and leave your name, your affiliation, and what you're planning on speaking about, which has to be the 21-22 proposed budget. Also, if you prefer not, if persons in the public prefer not to speak directly to the board and just want to submit written comments, they may also do that to the board email.
Thank you. President White, I'm sorry, Commissioner Powell.
Just a process question. What, on the capital improvement plan, if it was emailed, I didn't get it. And is it going to be a physical copy going to be sent out?
Yes, it was emailed. It was emailed yesterday morning, and a physical copy will be delivered to you on Friday afternoon.
Actually, Kalia, just for clarification, I think it was emailed to you yesterday morning. You emailed it to us yesterday after the
afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Commissioner,
if you could check what email you used, because my RCSD email isn't working.
Okay.
So, and when are the questions due for that part, for the CIP?
For the CIP, that's round 3, and that will be due. 1 second.
Hold on, I have the calendar here.
Yes. That is going to be due on the 22nd of April.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kalia. So President White, I'm turning it over to you so you can close the meeting officially as That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. What time was this meeting supposed to end? It looked like you did a good job. What
Thank
was
you.
the
7:04. Thank
what time
you
were we
all.
supposed to? What time were we supposed to end? 7?
7:30.
Oh, Commissioner Vice President Elliott, a little bit of comment. No, good job, everybody. Commissioner LeBron and every board member except me who asked fewer questions.
Do we have an executive session?
I don't think so, Steve.
Yes, we do. We got a couple of items.
Yes, but not for tonight because this is not, this is a deliberation. Yeah, I was like, not for tonight, this is a deliberation.
She just messing with you. She just messing with
Oh,
you. She trying to,
I was like, oh no, so not tonight.
She's trying to get her, keep her record intact. We do have to do a survey and then we'll call it a night. So let's do this.
No
Let's take
survey,
about an hour.
actually.
Let's take about an hour to do this survey.
There is no survey because this is not a traditional meeting.
Oh man.
Wow.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner LeBron.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
Enjoy the
Oh, wait,
rest
we
of
gotta
your
take a vote.
Wednesday.
Is that a motion? Is that a motion to adjourn,
Motion.
Commissioner LeBron? Seconded by
Seconded.
Vice President Elliott. All those in favor indicate by saying good night.
Good
Good night,
night.
everybody. Be safe.
And
Good job.